Welcome back, trainers. I'm Tyson Hughes, joined here by Hayden McTavish, and we're happy to kick off top four alongside mainstream. You get a little bit of action from both sides. We'll be your commentators here, as well as the commentators that are featured on the mainstream as well. Have both played up in your browser. You can do a little split screen action, have all the action going, all the analysis, get as much info from the games as possible. But we're super excited to, have this partnership with the World Championships here and get to cast it and give you even more insight to these high level games. I'm super excited to get to round out the day here and decide our finalists.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited to provide a little bit of supplementary commentary to be able to just highlight how many interesting technical details there are once we reach this level of play. I think we have two extraordinary players that we get to feature with this first top four match, and then another two extraordinary players that we get to feature in that next one. And I'm still so overwhelmed, even just from that last top 8 match we got to see. It was just such incredible Pokemon. So we're going to give a quick review of the two matches that we're going to be able to showcase for today. We've got James Evans and Montana Mott up top. That's the one we're going to do first. And then Hirofumi Kimura, who just finished up over on the mainstream, winning over Victor Medina, and Giovanni Shishka, who we were able to cast on our side stream, really convincingly dominating with that Choice Scarf Chi-Yu in the sun.
And Hirofumi here being Japan's last hope for that odd year for Japan, really having to fight against 3 NA players who could be potentially, the next world champion. And as all these trainers, vie for that title, it's going to be some intense games for sure. I don't believe any of these players have played in brackets, so it really is going to come down to their prep and what other people have, told them from other stream games and things like that, to really decide of what their game plans are going to be and what they want to do moving forward. But to see the army of people that they've had to conquer over, not only in Swiss, but here in this top cut bracket, we see so many names, so many titans taken down, and the top 4 of the World Championships is really in of itself its own title. But of course, these players want to continue to fight for even more. They want to fight for that title itself.
Yeah, once you're in top 4, it's so close. You can taste it. Like, everyone's got to be so excited about potentially being the next world champion. But for sure, a good thing to highlight, this is that whole top 16 bracket. Every one of those matches was an incredibly high stakes $5,000 money match that these players were playing against another brilliant player in the world. These players have managed so much incredibly difficult, stressful decision making, and they're so locked in, I'm sure, to be doing that one more time to try to get that spot on the big Sunday finals tomorrow.
Yeah, and that Sunday finals, again, to reiterate, it's in an arena, which is the first time in VGC history, and I think in competitive Pokemon's history, right? Like, I mean, we talk about how long the World Championships has been around for. I didn't play back then, but I remember, like, stories from other older players who, talk about the lobbies of hotel rooms and things like that. So to elevate it now to an arena is such a grand scale of things and really emphasizes how important these World Championships are. And I'm only excited. I'm even more excited now to see and how it is later down the line, in 10 years from now, 20 years from now, how much bigger it can get. But we have our two players featured here on stream. That's going to be James Evans versus Montana Mott is going to be our first of the top 4 matches. Both players smiling ear to ear. How happy they could be again to be in top 4 of the World Championships.
Yeah, absolutely. 2 accomplished players, just so excited to be able to showcase their incredible skills at this high level of play. We'll give a quick chance to shout out some of the accomplishments of both of these 2 players. If you're not familiar, you definitely should be. They've both won regionals last year. James Evans, also a former world champion in 2018 in Nashville, and Montana having just refined this Calyrex Shadow Rider archetype for years, from 2024 and 2025, all of these results with that particular archetype, and really just an expert in those Pokemon, ready to bring them hopefully to that stadium tomorrow is what Montana's aiming for.
And I think speaking of refining, both of these players have done a bit of that themselves. James having refined the team, I know, at least adjusting definitely a couple spreads, maybe some moves. Not Pokemon, I believe. It's the same 6 that were brought from last, the NAIC tournament not too long ago on Montana, had won a regional with Shadow Rider as well. So bringing it back in full force for regulation, I hear, and adjusting it with this new Dragonite that we've seen featured on stream a couple times before, it is really cool. And both these trainers, again, are refining their teams. This is the refinement. This is the peak of all that refining. This is kind of the culmination of all that work throughout their seasons and their previous results, and I think are great examples of what both of the players are capable of doing.
Bring to the table, James Evans' masterpiece is this Calyrex, Shadow Rider, Koraidon, Incineroar, Raging Bolt, Brute Bonnet, Landorus, and Carnot composition. A really unique take on Sun plus Calyrex Shadow Rider that has a ton of incredibly powerful options that it can bring to bear. We got to showcase this in top 8, was an incredible match, and James really is just in peak form coming into this top 4 match. I'm really excited to see what he has in store here.
I think re-highlighting a lot of the important things here in what almost is, you know, a mirror, at least of the Shadow Riders. While the other Pokemon are different, the teams kind of function the same way that they support the Calyrex Shadow Rider. Both are opting for the Encore and Astral Barrage there, and Psychic as well. So really leaning into that Focus Sash, being able to take a massive hit and then Encore or, you know, just Astral Barrage back. Being able to guarantee that other than the Life Orb variant is very important. And James has a lot of options on his team as well to kind of support that in either the Koraidon with more burst damage, or even, you know, things like the Incineroar with Fake Out and Helping Hand, which we got to see in his previous top 8 game. And Montana's team as well here features that Shadow Rider that we just mentioned, but instead of supported by the Zamazenta, a different fighting type Pokemon, but still one definitely that to be feared, with, you know, the Dauntless Shield, giving it a defense boost and rounding out the team with a bit more different, I would say more defensive Pokemon with like the Amoonguss and potentially more bulky Chien-Pao, as we see an Assault Vest on it.
Yeah, that Chien-Pao choice is going to be, I think, really, really important. We were talking about this before the match. Having those Dark-type options into a Calyrex Shadow Rider mirror can be so crucial, especially with that Priority Sucker Punch. And having that Assault Vest means that this Chien-Pao isn't immediately going to be threatened by needing to maybe switch in on an Astral Barrage. It's going to be like a 3-hit KO maybe, not a 2-hit KO, and that gives just a lot of ability to have some flexibility into what is normally a really tough mirror matchup. There's also that Dragonite on Montana's side, which has the Terra Normal option to become immune to that Astral Barrage, and has a few priority options even that can hit that Calyrex Shadow Rider with the Aqua Jet on that Choice Band Dragonite set.
And a bit of a blast from the past as well from that Dragonite set. Anyone who's played VGC earlier in this year recognized the power of Terra Normal Extreme Speed Dragonite, which is actually very funny in a format, you know, with so much Shadow Rider. Not even being able to hit it with your Extreme Speeds seems very, very funny, but that's why you have, you know, Aqua Jet on it as well to break that Focus Sash, or if you have brought it down to its Focus Sash to finish off that Calyrex Shadow Rider. And I'm actually really curious if that Dragonite even comes to the matchup, right? Because yes, you have Terra Normal Extreme Speed for everything else, but you can't hit Calyrex Shadow Rider, but it also can't hit you with its Astral Barrage. Yes, Psychic and things like that, but not being able to hit you with the strongest move could potentially be great for Montana as well. And with, you know, as you mentioned, Hayden, with the Chien-Pao, with its double dark moves and Sucker Punch and Ruination, and being a dark type itself, taking those resistant Astral Barrages are going to be very nice, especially when you're going to have to be facing down another Shadow Rider. And I really think that is a great piece of information about the forum, as how can you build your team to deal with the same restricted that you have. So in this case, a very popular, you know, Shadow Rider, right? You want tools in your team to deal with it. The Terra Normal Dragonite, the Assault Vest Chien-Pao, even the Wide Guard Zamazenta. And James has options where you could just burst through it. You have priority on the Raging Bolt and Thunderclap. You have a Focus Sash on your Calyrex. You have the Brute Bonnet with your own dark type of your own. And seeing how the different players come to similar conclusions, but different Pokemon completely, is always interesting to see.
Yeah, definitely something to watch as those dark types as we go into this match. But we're going to just be seeing the restricteds coming up from Montana's side and a whole lot of dragons from James Evans' side. We're going to see that Sun activating from the Koraidon, first Calyrex's Unnerve message is going to activate. And then the Photosynthesis is going to be activating later on that Raging Bolt, setting it up to do a whole lot of damage here early on, having the potential to just start with a Thunderclap and break that Focus Sash on the Calyrex Shadow Rider on the other side of the field. So a ton of very explosive damage potential from James's side and from Montana's side. Really curious what we might be expecting to see in this first turn.
And with a Dauntless Shield boost to boost the defense of the Zamazenta there on Montana's side, that means that this Koraidon is going to be doing just a little bit less damage to it as well if it decides to attack into it. Raging Bolt also has the option to go for an explosive Terra Electric to maybe boost up the damage a little bit more on it as well, to maybe get rid of that Zamazenta, which could be annoying for a potential Shadow Rider for James in the back. We see James here maybe considering which target he wants to choose down, because you only can get rid of one if you do double a slot. You could of course split your damage, but if you don't get rid of either the Shadow Rider or the Zamazenta, they could get very quickly out of hand, as we see a Terrestrialization here into the Calyrex Shadow Rider there for Montana.
So going into that Ghost Terrestrialization, really going all in on potential damage from this Astro Barrage here. We're going to see that Terrestrialization come out, and a Mirroring Terrestrialization from James's side. Going to be that Koraidon going to be a Fire type, stacking up some fire damage, and that Sun going to be able to do a ton of damage in return. We're going to have to see how much damage this ultimately amounts to. That Astro Barrage is going to come out first. Calyrex Shadow Rider used primarily because of that really high speed. And with the Terra boost, that's going to be more than half to the Koraidon and almost half to the Raging Bolt. But Koraidon going to try to fix that speed deficit that it has, going for a Flame Charge, boosting up to be faster than the Calyrex Shadow Rider, faster than anything on that side of the field. And it's going to survive that turn, and so is the Raging Bolt, with the Volt Switch coming out on a 4 hit point Raging Bolt, getting some nice chip damage into that Zamazenta, but very crucially, preserving it as an opportunity to come in later for some cheeky priority Thunderclaps.
And priority James gets to preserve there with the Raging Bolt. I can't emphasize how important that is. You have two forms in it as James brings in the Brute Bonnet here. I think having the option of Sucker Punch or Thunderclap is amazing here, especially when you're facing down Montana's Shadow Rider that is already terrestrialized and is at such low HP, which would be in range of either a Sucker Punch or a Thunderclap if it does choose to go into an attack. The thing is, as well as the Koraidon now being at +1 speed, thanks to that Flame Charge, allows it to outspeed the Calyrex as well. So you have two different ways of maybe dealing with the Calyrex's turn, and it's kind of on Montana to respond. Thanks to the Photosynthesis boost on the Brute Bonnet as well, we did see it get a defense boost there, meaning it's going to take the body press from a Zamazenta a little bit better if it wants to redirect it, but instead going to see a Protect from Montana.
Yeah, Montana just trying to reposition a little bit, really struggling from the pressure off of from James' side of the field. And a Sucker Punch is going to finish off that Calyrex Shadow Rider. So Calyrex Shadow Rider got off the one Astro Barrage, which was a bunch of nice chip damage, but Montana's now lost one of the key pieces for his game plan in this first game, as we're going to see this Koraidon just going to attack into a Protect with a Collision Course. And then we're going to have to see what Montana can bring out here to be able to adjust with all this pressure coming out from James' side of the field.
And we see the Dragonite swap in here. We actually do see Montana bring it. Maybe that Terra Normal here, especially without a Shadow Rider on the field, is going to be able to potentially knock out the Koraidon. And with how the priority works as well, Extreme Speed would be able to knock out the Koraidon if it does choose to go for that. And, you know, but there would be no terrestrialization is the thing as well, so you actually get to resist two of the moves from the Koraidon here, that being the fighting and the fire moves, which is actually very, very nice. So you don't have the immunity to something like Astral Barrage, but Extreme Speed is still going to hit very hard with the Choice Band.
Yeah, I think we're really seeing why Dragonite is such an interesting choice from Montana's side. Even without the terrestrialization, it has a lot of options into this Koraidon, and it's actually just going to finish off this really big threat that James had been building up with the Flame Charge. Going to keep that Zamazenta safe now to be able to fire off a Body Press into that Brute Bonnet. So that's going to be a bunch of damage, but that defense boost from the Sun, keeping Brute Bonnet around. And this is going to be a pretty crucial factor in the match. There's not a lot of answers Montana has to that Spore, and Dragonite got off the one really important attack, but it's really got a snooze now for a while, and that's a really nice opportunity for James hovering over that Calyrex Shadow Rider to try to set up some pressure.
And the really beneficial thing here that James has is that the Dragonite is locked into Extreme Speed and is asleep. So James doesn't even have to go for an Astral Barrage if he doesn't want to. He can just go for a Psychic potentially into the Zamazenta, not even risk the Wide Guard games, and just get damage on the Zamazenta. Of course, you could go for an Astral Barrage if you think Montana's maybe going to switch out the Dragonite to try to reset so you can hit the Calyrex later with something like an Aqua Jet or an Outrage if you want to lock into that. But Calyrex, really, I can't emphasize enough, has a lot of flexibility here. With its Focus Sash intact, is able to go for an array of moves. Even Encore, I think, is fine. You can Encore to Body Press, and guess what? Calyrex is immune to that as well. And, you know, Raging Bolt potentially being the Pokemon of choice, swapping in for the Brute Bonnet here, maybe expecting to get a knockout on the Zamazenta or a defensive play from Montana.
So trying to preserve maybe that Brute Bonnet, we're going to see the Raging Bolt hitting in. If it's able to survive the turn, it has a bunch of potential with Thunderclap. We're going to see Dragonite staying in from Montana's slot. Montana maybe not wanting to risk switching anything in, but that Astral Barrage, without Wide Guard coming out from Montana's side of the field, is going to bring that Zamazenta down in range of another one. Body Press, which was intended to take out that Brute Bonnet, instead taking out the Raging Bolt. That's some nice progress from Montana's side of the field, but it hasn't gotten rid of the Spore pressure from James' side of the field after that switch, and this Zamazenta cannot both Body Press and Wide Guard, so things are looking pretty tough for Montana now that this Zamazenta is in range of a KO from the Calyrex Shadow Rider.
And the very cool thing here with the Sun being active on the field and with no way to overwrite it, Montana just kind of has to let this Brute Bonnet get that defense boost from the Photosynthesis again, which means I think an Extreme Speed, especially without the Terra Normal, might not even be enough to knock out the Brute Bonnet, and you're relying on the Zamazenta to live through this turn, either an Astral Barrage or a Psychic, to get the Body Press off. But we see the Zamazenta go for a Protect there, recognizing how important it is to even deal with the Brute Bonnet, as Dragonite takes another turn of sleep, which means James gets to go for a move, free of charge with the Calyrex. That's going to be the Astral Barrage, and is this enough to finish off the Dragonite is the big question. And it looks like after the damage that it's not, and Dragonite's going to get to hang on another turn, as James maybe was playing around the wake up of the Dragonite there, putting it to sleep. Also covers if another Pokemon gets to come in.
Yeah, so Montana really being careful here. It's really dangerous to switch anything in with the Spore pressure out, but now that this Dragonite has burned a couple of turns of sleep, there's definitely some pressure for Montana, especially with the Sun fading. I believe that just happened. That's going to mean that maybe that Extreme Speed can finish off the Brute Bonnet. So we're going to see a Wide Guard coming out from Zamazenta, just preventing the Astral Barrage into a bunch of special attack boosts from the Calyrex Shadow Rider. And Dragonite is going to wake up and go for that Extreme Speed into the Brute Bonnet. It's not enough to KO, though. Brute Bonnet with just so much defense. As a Psychic, reading the Wide Guard is going to come out, give a special attack boost to that Calyrex, and get rid of that Zamazenta.
And I think Psychic is such a safe play from James there, just guaranteeing you get the knockout. If Zamazenta does wake out there and doesn't wake up, but just goes for the Wide Guard, right? You block that turn, and Montana maybe has a way back in that game after the Brute Bonnet survives there, which is a clutch survival. Being able to go for another Extreme Speed next turn potentially would have been absolutely huge, as Raging Bolt is the last Pokemon. And with the Focus Sash here on Calyrex and Brute Bonnet still around to go for a Rage Powder, I'm not sure if Montana has a way back in this game.
Yeah, you got to see the fist bump from James Evan there as soon as he sees that the Raging Bolt is in the back and not the Qianpao. If that had been Qianpao in the back, I think this whole game looks different for Montana. You could have maybe switched it in earlier on that Psychic to set up the Extreme Speed to be a KO. There's a lot of options for the end game here, but as it is now, with Brute Bonnet able to redirect and Calyrex able to go for a single target +1 Astral Barrage, looks like it's going to be game one in James's favor. Not quite a KO in the Raging Bolt yet, but all this Raging Bolt is going to do is knock out a Brute Bonnet and set itself up to be KO'd by this Calyrex Shadow Rider next turn.
Yeah, and with the Focus Sash intact, even something like a critical hit Thunderclap wouldn't be enough for Montana to bring this Calyrex down. And that's going to be game one for James Evans here, and one step closer to making finals of the World Championship. And I'm really curious to see maybe what either player is going to do adjustment-wise, because from James, at least, that seemed like a very solid game plan. We saw him locking in his moves relatively quickly, and he kind of knew as long as the Qianpao isn't in the back, he could kind of deal with the other threats, and as long as your end board is something like the Shadow Rider and the Brute Bonnet, you can redirect any of the oppressive threats, like the Body Press, like the Extreme Speed, even something like the Raging Bolt in the back.
Yeah, absolutely. James just played that so phenomenally. We're going to do a quick review of some of the key KOs from the match. That Koraidon did go down early, but it didn't matter so much because this Calyrex Shadow Rider was just in such good position to be able to go for these Astro Barrages. They didn't take KOs quickly or anything, but it was enough to slowly pivot through the game, and James really crucially preserving that Brute Bonnet just gave so much time for this Calyrex Shadow Rider to get all of the KOs that it needed to for the end of this game. As the Dragonite wasn't able to get that crucial KO and did faint to that Seed Bomb, there's just not quite enough damage quite quickly enough from Montana, and I think James did an excellent job of managing that so well throughout the game.
And I want to highlight how important that Dragonite was to Montana's game plan as well, but we'll do that in just a little bit as we see the leads from both of our players. Montana switching it up with the Amoonguss, a Brute Bonnet variation of his own, with the Calyrex Shadow Rider, and James Evans sticking with the Raging Bolt and the Koraidon.
So an interesting switch up from Montana, bringing that Amoonguss gives some options to say, oh, I see you were playing a Spore game plan last time with that Brute Bonnet. Maybe I'll play into Spore as well. And so having some really interesting options at the start of this game. With the Terra Water option on the Amoonguss, you can maybe survive from an attack from the Koraidon still, but it's going to be tough to survive this combination of attacks. So it's a nice pivoting Pokemon that can maybe buy some time for the Calyrex Shadow Rider, but it's rather likely that James is going to be able to threaten a ton of damage in response to this Amoonguss.
And Amoonguss, unfortunately, does not have the benefit of receiving a defense boost from the Sun, so it has going to take a massive amount of damage from the Koraidon potentially here if James decides to opt into that. But if, you do go for Protect on the Amoonguss, then your Shadow Rider potentially could go for a damaging move of its own. As we see another Terrestrialization, Montana sticking with a similar plan from game 1, where clicking the Terra Ghost Astro Barrage, turns out it does a lot of damage, and building your game plan around that makes a lot of sense as James goes for the Protect here on the Koraidon, making sure that isn't a possibility. Rage Powder from the Amoonguss to redirect any of those attacks, potentially a Flame Charge from Koraidon, or a Dragon Pulse from the Raging Bolt. But Astro Barrage going to be coming out here with that Terra Ghost is going to do so much to James's Pokemon. Maybe with the Assault Vest it eats a little bit better, but still actually takes that a lot better than I thought, meaning the Raging Bolt is going to get to Volt Switch out.
Yeah, I think really showcasing why James has been so comfortable leading this Raging Bolt. It has a really nice, safe way to sort of see what Montana is leading, take an Astro Barrage, pivot into whatever's most useful here. And it looks like it might be that Brute Bonnet that James is hovering over. Immune to the redirection from Rage Powder, it has some really nice options with either Sucker Punch or Spore here. So we'll have to see. It looks like that is indeed the choice that James is going to be bringing out. And we're going to see the two mushrooms from the past and present facing down next to their respective restricteds. And we're going to have to see how this turn plays out.
And I think this is a very volatile turn because Amoonguss here, or Brute Bonnet here on James's side, is actually going to be immune to a potential Rage Powder from Montana, being a grass type. So that Sucker Punch, Montana really has no way around and kind of has to take it unless you want to maybe encore the Koraidon into the Protect that it just went for, which Montana does have access to. So there's a lot of options that could happen here, and if James gets it correct, or Montana gets it correct, the game, this turn I think really is going to decide which player maybe could win this game too.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much that rides on whether someone's able to incapacitate the other restricted Pokemon. We are going to see a Terrestrialization coming out from James' side of the field. Going to be that Koraidon turning into the Fire type to try to maximize its damage output into this Amoonguss. Crucially, that might be changing the damage rolls on whether a Flame Charge is sufficient to knock out this Amoonguss instead of a Flare Pulse. That Calyrex going for the Astro Barrage, though. Going to get down a ton of damage into that Koraidon, not worrying at all about that Sucker Punch. Taking that Koraidon down to less than 70 hit points as a Flame Charge comes out. Going to hit into that Amoonguss, likely finishing it off, but taking a Rocky Helmet bit of recoil for its troubles. But very crucially, that Amoonguss is down, and the Brute Bonnet hasn't moved yet, and it looks like it locked into a Spore, which is going to really profoundly change how things play out. As the Calyrex Shadow Rider, it's done a lot of damage so far, but it can't do any more while it's asleep.
Yeah, and having to take that sport is very, very dangerous now because with the Koraidon being at +1 speed, it's going to outspeed the entirety of Montana's team here, regardless of what comes in. Of course, you have priority in a Raging Bolt or maybe even the Dragonite if that's brought, but the Zamazenta for Montana being brought in here makes a lot of sense. You know, with that defense boost from the Dauntless Shield is going to be doing a decent amount of damage. Might even be enough to knock out the Brute Bonnet even with the Photosynthesis boost, just based on how much we saw from game 1. You're also threatening a knockout into Koraidon with how low it is, but you have to worry about, again, your Calyrex, which is most likely going to get its Focus Sash broken here, either from a Flare Blitz from Koraidon, or either a Seed Bomb from Brute Bonnet. And Montana really has to pick which target he wants to break down to kind of advance his game state.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some really interesting decision-making here, though, from James. This Koraidon's all set up, but it doesn't have a lot of hit points left. We're going to see a Zamazenta going for Protect, trying to bait a Flare Blitz into that slot. We'll see if James fell for the bait, but no, it's a Flame Charge, breaking that Focus Sash on the Calyrex Shadow Rider and setting this Koraidon up to be able to get a KO next turn if it so chooses. The Calyrex is going to burn its first turn of sleep, and this Brute Bonnet is going to be able to do just a Spore into the protecting Zamazenta. So not too much progress made from Montana's side of the field, whereas that Koraidon really snowballing into quite a bit of a problem for all of these restricted Pokemon on the other side of the field.
And as it gets another boost of speed here, the Koraidon being at +2, guarantee for sure, it's definitely going to be outspeeding a lot of the Pokemon as the Calyrex unfortunately stays asleep here. And the Brute Bonnet actually works out in Montana's favor. The Sucker Punch is not going to go off. Montana most likely clicking a Protect or an Encore there, otherwise the Sucker Punch would have continued to go off. And that Collision Course doing so much damage to the Zamazenta. Body Press, though, actually not able to knock out the Brute Bonnet, thanks to that Photosynthesis boost.
This Brute Bonnet is insane! It survived so many attacks with just a little bit of hit points. This is taking, like, powerful, restricted Pokemon attacks that are sometimes super effective, but just that little bit of Photosynthesis boost from the sun, keeping this Pokemon able to pressure all of these really powerful Sucker Punches into the Calyrex Shadow. It has the redirection option, it has the Spore. It's just a phenomenal choice for James in this game, and it's really making things quite tough for Montana here.
Yeah, and the Protect there from the Zamazenta and a desperate attempt to block attack from the Koraidon, but Koraidon instead going into the Calyrex Shadow Rider to finish it off there, Flame Charge, bringing it to +3 speed. The speed doesn't matter anymore. Koraidon, you could stop. You've already done so much.
Koraidon really just being very careful not to use those Flare Blitzes and reduce its hit points. Really wants to be careful so that it's a factor later in the game. We're going to see a Spore go off into the Zamazenta Protect, but I think Montana is probably kicking himself. It would have been great to get off a finishing blow on either of these two Pokemon. There was just so much risk on attacking with that Zamazenta, and so Montana happened to get that read wrong. But the Chien-Pao hitting the field now gives a bit of Sucker Punch pressure for that Koraidon.
The thing I will say, though, is because the Chien-Pao is a Soul Vest, it won't have access to Protect. So with a Rage Powder from the Brute Bonnet, you can guarantee you are avoiding a Sucker Punch, and you can freely go for an attack into the Chien-Pao. And with something like Raging Bolt and the CS Shadow Rider in the back, James is going to be able to clean up this game very, very nicely.
That is a 4 times super effective Collision Course, boosted by the extra effective Collision Course, doing extra damage when it's super effective. That is just an incredible amount of damage going out into that poor Chien-Pao, as Zamazenta finally finishes off that Brute Bonnet. But all that's going to mean is that Montana gets to see one more Pokemon before this match ends. That was a phenomenally well-piloted Koraidon play from James here. Just bringing the Pokemon that could take KOs every single time, and Montana dropping that Dragonite just didn't have anything that could handle the attacks that this Koraidon had.
And I think that was kind of the tug and pull from this matchup, where you have to really balance if you want to bring Chien-Pao or you want to bring Dragonite, where Chien-Pao felt like it really didn't do much that game, but Dragonite was able, to finish off the other Pokemon with extreme speed, and making that decision is no easy feat. But James Evans there, going to be your first finalist of the World Championships, a senior division world champion before, now trying to aim for that Masters title, and we see him there pondering on the stage, really just taking it all in. He's been working so hard, and off that result from NAIC, I'm sure was just hungry for more, and now that he's in finals, I'd be really curious to hear his thoughts.
Yeah, he's been absolutely crushing it this tournament. He defeated the first seed in top 8, Kotsuki Day, who might have been the favorite to win the tournament, at least personally mine, and now has defeated Montana Mott, just an expert in Calyrex Shadow Rider, by playing to that Koraidon so well. I think this is the first time in quite a while that we've had a former world champion making it to the finals and potentially doing that repeat performance. I'm sure James would love to say, hey, this world championship win that I got in the seniors division, I can do it again at the highest age division, and really putting himself in strong contention with just a perfectly executed game there. That was wonderful peak Pokemon to see from James.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to now watch finals, now knowing that James is fighting for that second world champion title, and that makes me even more hyped to see who our other finalist is going to be there between, you know, Geo and the other player, the last Japanese player in the bracket, Hirofumi, and that's going to be a super exciting game to get to watch because, you know, it's a potential new world champion versus an old one, and getting to highlight that later down the line is going to be super exciting.
Absolutely. So let's do a quick review of some of the key turn factors in that match. James Evans very crucially going for that flame charge, still getting that KO on the Amoonguss, but keeping enough hit points that this collision course could come out into the Zamazenta, that the flame charges later could break down that Calyrex Shadow Rider, and this Brute Bonnet, just an absolute behemoth of redirection, buying like 6 or 7 turns for this Koraidon to just slowly whittle away the whole rest of the team. That Koraidon didn't have Flare Blitz as an option for this whole game because of how low its HP was, and it just didn't need it. It went for all of these other attacks, KO'd, I think, all 4 of the Pokemon on the other side of the field, and really just was so well played. You really, in these Calyrex Shadow Rider mirrors, it really comes down to the partner Pokemon that each player has. And James just executed that Koraidon game plan so well that it didn't really have to come down to Calyrex Shadow Rider speed ties. The Calyrex Shadow Rider never even hit the field that second game.
Yeah, and I think with how explosive the Koraidon was as well, like really getting to redirect around with the Brute Bonnet. And again, that defense boost from the Photosynthesis was really, really excellent at allowing it to survive against the threats that we saw from Montana's side in, you know, the extreme speeds, the body presses, and things like that. We didn't even get to see a move, but even a Qian Pao Sucker Punch, right? It got to redirect, so that couldn't even happen. And I think that Brute Bonnet, even more than the Koraidon, was kind of the key to James' game plan and what allowed Koraidon even to succeed in the first place.
Yeah, I am so proud of that Brute Bonnet. It was so incredibly interesting to see this Pokemon that for years has been really overshadowed by its present version, Amoonguss, finally getting a chance to shine with those defense boosts from the Photosynthesis. It's got such an incredible base stat total, such an incredible move pool, and now a really useful typing with that dark typing into other Calyrex Shadow Riders. I think it's a really interesting call for James to be bringing it all the way to the finals, and I'm really excited for what influences this might have on players' choice in the future for which mushroom to use. It seems like James has really found a situation where Brute Bonnet excels.
Yeah, and I am really excited to see a newer team like this. It isn't, you know, the Zamazenta Calyrex Shadow Rider. It's not the Miraidon Calyrex Ice. It's, you know, Koraidon and Calyrex Shadow Rider. And we really haven't gotten to see Koraidon a lot, but it seems like, you know, Sun has shown up to Anaheim and really brought that to the tournament. A lot of the Koraidons, I mean, even on the other side of the bracket, I'm blanking on what Hirofumi has brought to the tournament, but we know that Koraidon is on Geo's team, but we're going to get an interview here quick from James.
Let's get a round of applause. Yeah. James, the last time you were a Worlds finalist, it was back in 2018, and you ended up winning in the seniors division. How does it feel to be one of the first people to have the opportunity to get a seniors division win and a masters division win?
I say it's not like I'm even acting either. This is all genuine. I just have no clue what to say. It's just one of those things that I never thought in my life would happen. I literally, I feel like I'm dreaming right now. It's unreal.
Well, maybe a little noise from the crowd will help wake you up. I mean, if you think about it, it's been a very long weekend. What were the challenges? I mean, what has been your toughest battle so far to get here?
Genuinely, probably before the tournament, just the battle with myself, funnily enough. I did not have a team for this tournament until 1:30 in the morning, the day of day one. I made the last change, and I was fully accepting I was going to go 2-3 drop. I did not expect to make day two. I did not expect to make top cut. I did not expect to make it this far at all. But I've been wanting this performance for a very, very long time. And you know, I had a lot of frustration. I would say I was just angry that I wasn't performing up to my expectations in practice. But that's never stopped me before from going to the tournament and clearing my head. And when I sat down for round one of day one, I just said, you're gonna play good Pokemon today. Don't worry about whether you win or lose. You're here. And I just don't know how to describe it. I haven't been stressed about anything. I keep going into every match with a smile on my face, knowing that I'm going to play good Pokemon. And I keep playing good Pokemon, and all my opponents have played good Pokemon. And I'm very happy that it's all been good Pokemon.
I mean, we just saw some incredible Pokemon in that last match against Montana. Walk us through your game plan when you started out, game one. What was the strategy?
So, oh my goodness. It's so hard to talk about things live on stage. Like, my brain feels very fried right now, so I apologize. But I kind of just knew. I haven't been overthinking. I haven't been overstressing. I just kind of knew I'm going to make plays that I know I feel comfortable with. If they don't work out, they don't work out. But I'm going to trust my gut on this one. Just approach the matchup knowing that Brute Bonnet's very good into it. A lot of his team is physical attackers, and the one special attacker that he has that really wants to come to the matchup can't really do a lot to it. Spore's very effective into the rest of his team, so that means, you know, Crydon's probably going to be a bring, and if I can get Bonnet and Crydon in the right spots, then they can clear the matchup.
Well, James, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me here and for sharing your thoughts. I know that you feel like you're at a loss for words, but I think this is one of the most genuine interviews I've got to do with you. So thank you so much for that. And before we wrap things up, do you want to give any shout outs to anybody in the crowd or watching at home?
Oh, of course. Shout outs to all my friends at school, my parents. I love you guys so much. Shout outs to my friends Kareem, Brady, Kylie, Zach, Joe, everyone else that I'm forgetting right now. I'm so tired, but NJ, Vishy, Beck, everyone that helped me construct the team, I couldn't be any more grateful. I couldn't be any more grateful to the people that have helped me become the person who I am today. And I'm able to stand here and just tell everyone that I'm in Worlds Finals again. But I say to reiterate, a special shout outs to my family, my mom, my dad, my sister, my grandmother, my dog at home, my grandfather. I love you all very much.
Thank you so much, James. Let's get one more round of applause for our first Worlds finalist. You'll be seeing James tomorrow on Championship Sunday take to the arena stage to battle one of our next two top four competitors to take the title of world champion in the year of 2025.
I think
we'll have to figure out who that will be, though, so we're going to take a quick break while we set up our next top four match, so please stay tuned, everybody.
All right. What a wonderful interview from James. He's always such a sincere player, and it's so nice to see like how genuinely full of joy for Pokemon he is, how emotional he is about this wonderful accomplishment. That whole line of like, I'm in Worlds Finals again. What a transformative thing to be able to say that only a very small handful of players have ever been able to say in their entire history of playing the game.
Yeah, and I think to be able to have that opportunity again, you could really see how thankful exactly he was of that, to really see that emotion in his face and even in his gameplay, right? You talk about it, he knew that he just locked in what he felt was right, and to have that tied to the game, that level of connection to the game, I really don't think you get to see anywhere else, and I'm really excited to see him in finals tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll share something small that I sort of know a sliver of some of what James has been dealing with. After winning like a world championships in the senior division, it is so hard to make a name for yourself in the masters division. And James has done that in spades, showing that it wasn't just a division thing that was leading to his accomplishments. And I'm sure that there's so much emotion that rides with that, with being able to make it all the way back in a field that becomes even more difficult as soon as you've aged up into a new division. So I'm so excited to see what James has in store. I hope that he's able to play some good Pokemon tomorrow like he's been aiming today. And I'm really excited to see how far he and his Koraidon and Calyrex Shadow Rider can make it in this matchup.
And ride into finals they will, as we take a quick break here as the mainstream sets up that top 4 game. But don't go anywhere. We're going to be back with more action soon enough.